me start with this story. Just every time I come into Michigan, I fly into Detroit and I rent a car there. And whenever at the car rental agency, they always ask me, you know, the people helping you fill out all the paperwork, are you here? And I tell them it's for business and I'm trying to do something about their electric rates. And these are just your typical residential customers, and they always say, please, please do something. I can't afford it. I don't know what else to do. So Chairman Quackenbush, that might be something for you to consider as you see all these rate increases and as the commission reviews them, whether it's retail rates or whether it's wholesale capacity costs. There's been talk about how Michigan's rates are higher, and I won't go through some of my slides because essentially they've been gone over. Let me show you one though. The Midwest Independent System Operator, just last month, they did a comparison, an average rate comparison for Michigan and all other MISO member states. Michigan, as you can see, is at the very top. Its average rates are 20% higher than, Michigan's rates are 20% higher than average MISO rates. If you think that doesn't matter in terms of having an impact on consumers and businesses, you need to talk to more of them. Now, I've also heard, and this is very interesting, that in fact Michiganders benefit from higher electric rates. Okay, well, what do you get for your higher electric rates? Well, the arguments are as follows. One, Michigan gets higher system reliability. If utilities build electric generating plants and operate them, that's going to provide more electric independence for Michigan and greater reliability. A second argument is that there's a better environmental footprint. Again, Michiganders apparently support the 25 by 25 renewables program proposal. I believe that's on the ballot for this next month. And that means Michiganders are willing to pay extra for cleaner electricity. Another argument is greater adaptability without competition. In other words, limiting competition means that Michigan can better adapt to the inherent uncertainties and risks that we know are going to arise. As someone who started his career as a load forecaster, I can tell you that the only thing I can guarantee about my load forecast for 20 years out is they'd be wrong. And finally, there's a lot of talk about competition being a zero-sum game. Well, let me talk about all of these. Does limiting competition improve reliability? Well, Michigan is interconnected with both the Midwest Independent System Operator and PJM. In MISO's latest 2012 expansion plan, transmission expansion plan, it shows over $500 million in new transmission investment in Michigan. That's more than any other state, and no transmission constraints. So if Michigan tries this raise the drawbridge approach to electric independence, all that's going to do is reduce reliability, not improve it, and it will lead to higher costs. The entire point of having regional transmission organizations like PJM and MISO is to improve reliability and lower costs by essentially spreading the risk of outages across more utilities, having more backup. The other argument is that, well, competitive generators don't want to build in Michigan. Well, they did build until 2008. Now they wouldn't want to. But essentially, when regulators and politicians indicate their hostility to in-state investment by competitive generators and to competition in general, well then of course they're not going to build in Michigan. The prophecy becomes self-fulfilling. You're essentially hanging a large sign that says, do not invest in flashing lights in Michigan by essentially trying to change the rules to undercut competitors. What about the environment? Is limiting retail competition really better for the environment? Well, the answer to that is no. Competitive generators have a huge incentive to minimize environmental costs in the most economic way possible, for the simple reason that they can't pass those costs along to ratepayers like electric utilities can. Merchant generators can only recover economic investments in a competitive market. That means that their customers are not exposed to those risks, unlike a monopoly electric utility that's simply able to pass those costs on. That's how incumbent utilities work. They're essentially protected from uneconomic decisions because they can just pass on those risks and costs to their customers. Now, from an operational standpoint, I've been told that 25 by 25 will improve the environment. Well, I've got a study coming out, hopefully in a week or so, on intermittent wind generation. And MISO is the most egregious example of when you really need the power the most when wind power is not available. Less than 10% of the time in peak hours, you'll find wind generators actually providing power. They're great at providing power when you don't need it, when the prices are low, but when you need, on those hot, humid, sultry dog days of August or July, the wind power is not there. And that means you need more gas-fired backup. You need more backup generation, which costs more to operate, which is inefficient, and which pollutes the air. Not to mention all the impacts of the wind generators themselves. So it's not true that limiting competition is good for the environment, just the opposite. What about competition not being a way to address future risk and uncertainty, that limiting competition is better for that? Well, again, merchant generators face huge economic incentives to evaluate future economic risks as best they can, because they must bear the cost of their decisions. Again, regulated electric utilities do not bear those same risks, so their incentives are very different. Essentially, regulated utilities manage the risks that their regulators tell them to manage, and they don't worry about the other ones. Plus, risk management is never free. Hedging, if you're concerned about, say, volatile natural gas costs, well, hedging's expensive. It's like buying insurance. You end up losing money on average. I was involved in a case earlier this year with Rocky Mountain Power. Rocky Mountain Power spent over $1 billion on natural gas hedges. Turns out most of them were out of the money, and so they lost money. Again, all those costs went right to ratepayers. So when a regulated firm is hedging risks, its customers are really paying for it. And you have to ask, well, what do the customers want? The customers can hedge those risks just as well. So really what you have to deal with is, well, if you're a regulator, should you have your utility hedge risks? And if so, why? Why can't customers hedge those risks? Finally, you hear that competition is a zero-sum game. That if we allow greater competition in Michigan, that means whoever isn't competing is going to be paying for it. Well, that's simply wrong. Competition is not a zero-sum game. Ask Apple Computer, ask Microsoft, ask Google, ask Walmart. These firms succeed and make everyone better off because of competition. Moreover, one of the things that when you hear these arguments from utilities and advocates of eliminating competition is that from a simple standpoint, if you have greater competition and more customers are buying non-utility power, well, the utilities have more surplus power they can actually sell. And it's very ironic that in other states, DTE and Consumer Energy's retail subsidiaries are competing, and they're winning, and they're selling power to those customers at lower prices than what they sell to their own customers in Michigan. Maybe that's why it's a zero-sum game. I don't know. That's a very odd term for it. But competition really does work, and the arguments against it simply hold no water. Thank you very much.